This is The Big Question with Dr. Ellie Gonzalez, brought to you by Good News Unlimited, tackling the big questions in a simple and positive way.
The big question is, where did life come from? When it comes to this question, Christians will tell you that life was created by God, who is the source of all life himself. And the interesting thing is that when we turn to science to see if it has an alternative view, science actually has absolutely nothing to say about where life comes from.
When you get past all the thought bubbles, you realise that science simply doesn't know. And a lot of the popular answers about where life came from aren't really answers at all. For example, the idea that life arrived to planet Earth on an asteroid from somewhere else in the universe, all that does is try to shift the problem away from Earth, because we've got no answer down here, and we shift it to some other planet, hoping that they'll have the answer instead. So the question remains, where did life itself come from, like originally? Now, this is not a new question. The issue of the origin of life is one that great thinkers have worked on since antiquity. Back then, starting with the ancient Greeks, the idea of what they called the spontaneous generation of life was a popular one. This was the idea that living things emerged out of non-living things. And people saw plenty of evidence for it. For example, if they left a piece of meat out, maggots would come out of it. It was like magic. Of course, today, now that we're all scientific and modern, we know that that's total rubbish. It goes against every law of science. It just can't happen. There's absolutely no known mechanism by which life could come from non-life.
So let's get beyond the question of what life even is. That's a big enough problem in itself.
Let's assume we know. Now, one of the things we need for life to evolve from non-life is for the DNA and the proteins to exist and come together at actually the precise same time, purely by chance without any kind of intelligence. British astronomer Sir Frederick Hoyle wrote that the mathematical calculations for the probability of such a thing occurring is, I quote, nonsense of the highest order, end quote. The issue of the origins of proteins and DNA appears to be an insurmountable problem for atheistic scientists and philosophers because it's a straight-out mathematical impossibility. In fact, this was responsible for prominent atheist Sir Anthony Flew renouncing atheism on purely rational grounds. He concluded in 2004, after championing atheism for half a century, that, I quote, superintelligence is the only explanation for the origin of life. So, where did life originally come from? According to evolutionist and Nobel laureate George Wald, the only alternative to spontaneous generation is to believe in a single primary act of supernatural creation. There is no third position. End quote.
So, if we know that life doesn't evolve from non-life, the only possible conclusion is that life was created supernaturally. That's my view. And if you've got a different explanation that solves these issues, well, ring up your local university.
For more, contact goodnewsunlimited.com.